Oh, we got the matching jacket today. What's
Ah,
up?
great
Should have
minds
coordinated
think
this better.
alike.
Look at us. Look at us with the matching jackets and the whatnot.
How are you, brother?
I'm good. How you doing? Let me close my door real quick.
They're great, man. They're great.
Life is good, huh? You've been busy.
You're looking good. Yeah, we were busy, bro.
I
Trying to do this for like the last 2 weeks.
know, right? I know.
That's
It's
good.
funny because you're texting me, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., midnight. We're trying to figure out a time to try to make it happen. But we're here. That's what matters.
Yeah, we're
We
here.
are
That's
here.
what matters. That's good, man. Hey, so look, just to get to know you a little bit, right? I know you pretty well. I feel like I know you a lot. But who's Franco? How did you get started in business? And where you at now?
Who's Franco? How did he get started in business? I don't know why my camera's doing that. Is it doing that to you too?
The Matrix.
So who is Franco and how did I get started in business? Well, I'm born and raised in Peru, so I grew up in South America. My parents are farmers. My dad barely graduated high school. My mom never completed college, and for 16 years, I saw them hands and knees in the dirt, running a farm to provide for my brothers and I. So a lot of my ambition, my drive, my determination, um, a lot of my character comes from that. Growing up, the first vehicle I ever drove was a John Deere tractor. So don't let the suit confuse you. I'd rather do jeans and cowboy boots over a suit any day of the week. But in that world, a contract is a handshake. Your word is your bond. Yes means yes, no means no, and what you see is what you get, which is something that I love about that environment. It's something that I've always carried in business. So I graduated high school in Peru. I moved to Louisiana to go to college. I did a study abroad in Europe. I graduated with a degree in international business. And then I came back, and my first job out of college was in Memphis, Tennessee. And at the time, I thought it was everything I wanted. I had a salary, company credit card. I got to travel a lot. The more time I spent there, I realized that corporate environment really wasn't for me. Great organization, but our values just didn't align. A few things. I was the hardest working person there by far, and I sat next to the least hardworking person there, and we both made the same amount of money. And then also in that world, you kind of have to wait for somebody to retire, graduate, quit, something to open up to maybe have an opportunity. And if I didn't play enough golf, I wasn't going to be considered. So I wanted something a little bit more performance based, and I think entrepreneurialism has always been in me. My parents owning their business when I was like 11 years old. I started my very first business. I was walking through the fields, and I saw all the workers out there, and I thought about making frozen popsicles in my kitchen, and then I put them in an ice chest and walked around the fields and sold them for 50 cents a pop. I had my little notebook, and I take note of who owed me money, and then I went to my I went to my dad, who owned the business, obviously, and I told him who he needed to deduct from payroll. Everybody that owed me money, I was like, you got to deduct 50 cents from these people because they owe me. Uh, so I just think it's always been in me. So having this kind of corporate job, it triggered the fact that yeah, I'm meant to be an entrepreneur. So I left that world, came to Texas, and then that's how my business started. That's how it came about. So that's how I ended up here.
That's good. That's good. I mean, the part of the corporate that's when you really get to experience the other side. If the other side's greener, you know.
It ain't. It ain't.
So
I mean, there's pros and cons. There's pros and cons. Like I think a decision that someone needs to make early on is they need to make a decision on whether they're an employee or whether they're an entrepreneur, and there are pros and cons to both. I would love to 4:45 shut down my computer, and turn off my phone and go home and not have a single worry in the world. You know what I mean? If you work at a furniture store and the warehouse catches fire at midnight, the cashier isn't getting that phone call. The owner of the business is getting that phone call, waking up at midnight and going to go deal with that, right? So there are pros and cons to both. At the same time, if you are the cashier of that business, you're told your worth. Hey, you're worth $10 an hour, $15 an hour, $20 an hour, whatever it is. If you're the owner of the business, you're taking the profits of the business, right? So there are just pros and cons to both for sure. But that's a decision people need to make early on.
how important do you think it was for you or for overall people to experience the corporate life before they step into a full entrepreneurship, full commission kind of venture?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have that answer. I don't know if, if you have to experience what you don't want in order to really know what you do want. I think that real lasting change comes from a place of pain. So regardless of which side you're on, whether you're corporate or not, I think you have to experience a massive amount of pain, because that's what gets people moving, so I was unhappy and uncomfortable. And there's been twice that I've done that. I was feeling like that when I was in that role. And then I started my business. And then I was like 5 years, 6 years into running my business, I started to feel a little bit about like that about entrepreneurship as the fact that I was running a business, the pressure, the extra obligation, all of that. So I had to navigate through that and make changes one way or another. So pain is the number one driver of change, in my humble opinion. You've heard the old story of the dog on the porch, right? You know what I'm talking about? So, there's a porch out, an old man sitting there, neighbor walks by, dog is crying, and several days he just walks by on his way to work and sees the dog crying and asks, hey, why is your dog crying? It sounds like he's in pain. And then the guy goes, oh, where he's laying right there's a nail sticking out. And that's why he's crying. And he's like, that's crazy. Why doesn't he just get up and move and lay somewhere else? He's like, because it doesn't hurt bad enough. Right. So when I was in corporate, I was not pleased. So then that spark changed. And even as an entrepreneur, there has been times where I wasn't pleased and I had to evolve, I had to change, I had to upgrade, I had to make different routines or add a new skill set or subtract something that was taking my focus away, so that I can have clarity, so that I can hit goals. So is it required for somebody to have the corporate experience in order for them to realize entrepreneur? I don't think so. I think when somebody is in enough pain, that they'll change what they need that's holding them back, so that they can move forward in either side.
I remember when I learned that story, it was from you 3 years ago. The first call that we got with you as an office, you mentioned
Yeah.
that story. I've been telling it ever since.
Yeah, I carry that story. It reminds me of a lot. So yeah.
How important is your personal life balance or success to your business? Do you feel that when you're doing well in personal, you're doing well in business, or you can just do well in business and
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that the question, it's interesting because the I've heard this question in terms of work-life balance type of deal, but to me, it's neither. It's not a balance, it's a blend, right? I am Franco. That means I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a friend. That means I'm a business owner, homeowner, like all these different areas of my life. It just all goes into one. So I just need to make sure that I'm good and that I'm right. My business, if I could draw a stick figure and put bubbles around it, right? My business, my health, mental health, physical health, my spirituality, my friendships, my family, my relationships. These are just components. These are just tools. These are just. I'm looking at my desk. I have a pair of scissors, some markers, and a pen. These are just things that are there, that I utilize to build the life that I want. So if the scissor is dull and it's not cutting properly, I just go get a new scissor or fix the scissor or whatever it is, but it's not a direct representation of who I am. Does that make sense? So meaning if my business is not doing well or my personal life is going through a struggle or vice versa, if my business life is kicking butt, but my personal life is a mess or whatever it is, these are things that are available to me and it doesn't impact who I am. Does that make sense? My character, my integrity, my self-worth. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that my self-worth is not dependent on those things. Those are just resources that I build into. That sometimes there's good seasons and low seasons and high seasons and great seasons in every area, and those come and go.
Hmm. Oh, that's good. That's good. I mean, especially because you don't let like it's kind of like seasons, you said, right? I was listening to this video. It said something about good times, enjoy them because they're here to pass.
Yeah, of
Bad
course.
times, endure them because they're here to pass.
Sure.
We
This too
were
shall pass. It's all of it, like winter is supposed to last. You've heard, our friend Sebastian talk about this a lot. Like winter is supposed to last a season, right? Winter is 3 months. If your winter lasts a year, it isn't the weather, it's you. You've got to change. But vice versa, summer It's supposed to be 3 months. If your summer's lasting 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, that's great. Congratulations, you're doing some amazing things. But winter is coming. And there's a season coming. And sometimes that's in business. You can go on these tears. You can go on a 5 year, 10 year, crazy tear and blow up. But winter is coming. I know you run your business, and nobody could have predicted this, but if you would have been running your business pre-pandemic, you know what I mean? Your business would have probably taken a pretty big hit, if you were on a crazy tear. So these things happen. So yeah.
Yeah, that is crazy. I've thought about it. I'm like, well, if COVID would hit right now, like we would be in our houses, like no service. It's completely blocked off. So totally
Yeah.
get it.
Family life and personal and all those other things, it's the same thing. It comes in seasons. There are seasons where everybody's healthy and everybody's living great and everybody's happy, and brothers are graduating colleges and cousins are getting their first jobs, and everybody's getting married, and you go through this season in life where there's just all this joy and bliss. And then sometimes there's seasons where you deal with death in the family, and you deal with issues in the family, and maybe somebody's getting a divorce in the family, and these, like, it comes in seasons as well too. So your original question about how important is it to win in both or separate, absolutely. You want to win in all of it. You want to be a whole package, a whole team, well-rounded, and you want to win in every category. That is the goal, because you can have all the money in the world, but rich people get divorces too, you know what I mean? And nobody likes that. So it isn't just about the money. You want to win in all of it. But my self-worth and my self-esteem is not attached to any of those things. Self-esteem is your esteem of yourself. Nobody else can control that. So how my business is doing, or how my personal life, but this, that, like I can control how I feel about myself every day through my actions and controlling what I can control. Which is very, 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 very hard for entrepreneurs, because we're control freaks. we
Yeah.
want the power of everything. But sometimes detaching from certain outcomes, right? Detaching from the outcome, attaching yourself to the process, the grind, the results, the systems you have in place, the habits, great. But detaching a little bit from the actual outcome, and then just letting those things play.
Attachment to processes.
Mm-hmm.
Attachment to
Attach yourself to the grind. Attach yourself to your schedule, to the grind, to what time you're waking up, to your personal habits, what are you reading, your routines, all of that, because that long term, that always wins. That always gets you the outcome, even in the tough times. You know what I mean? Especially in the tough times. You just attach yourself to the process, but you kind of let go a little bit of the outcome, because sometimes you'll do all the right things and just not get a result.
Yeah.
And that's where frustration, stress, and anxiety lives, which causes us to stop doing those things. It's like, no, like just stay in there, because you're doing all the right things. But that requires self-awareness to make sure you're doing all the right things. But anyways, it's a different rabbit hole.
That's a different, yeah. This guy Tim Grover talks about that. Winning requires everything and more, and promise nothing. So
that's right.
But I mean, if you keep working hard enough for long enough, things are gonna start popping, and it's just law of attraction. Talking about winter, Franco, what's been your biggest hurdle in business? How did you overcome it?
I've had a few in business. Getting the business up and running in itself was a major hurdle. 2000, and I want to say either 17 or 18, I think it was 2018. I was running one of our locations in Houston. I was living in Houston, and then Hurricane Harvey hit and just wiped down half of Houston. And we do direct sales and retail. So, that took a major hit. And we, full team, full force, our sales force. I mean, we were cranking. The company was doing really, really well. And a hurricane comes out of nowhere and just all stop, all whole, everything stops. And then for a couple month period, we can't generate sales. At the time, navigating through that was very interesting. I actually had teams that were out of town, traveling and all that, and they didn't know if they could come back to Houston. They didn't know if their houses were flooded or their apartments were flooded, or there was a lot of chaos through that. So that was a pretty interesting. We actually decided to close down that location, and that's when I moved to San Antonio. So within a matter of a couple of days, we, the only alternative we saw is we're just going to close down this location, relocate to San Antonio, pop something open there, and then go from there. So that was very interesting. And obviously COVID. I mean, Tony, who isn't, I've asked that question, and to a business owner that led through COVID, that was a really big challenge. You know, 2 weeks. That's what they said. 2 weeks. It's just gonna last 2 weeks, and then we're gonna open back up. And I'm like, okay,
Two
great.
years.
Yeah, you know, here we are in 2023. You believe that COVID was 3 years ago, or started 3 years ago, the start of the pandemic. So those two were probably the highlights. We lost a lot of money. But the good thing is people. We have great people in place who really buy into the mission and who really buy into the organization and who really buy into the work that we do. So when you treat people right and you take care of them through COVID, I didn't do any layoffs, no furloughs. We retained our staff and we ran a negative payroll for that entire duration, the entire almost 3 months that we weren't able to sell, weren't able to interact. I just ran a negative payroll and ate the expense. And then when we came out of that, we came, stronger than ever before. And 2021 and 2022 were some of my highest profitable years ever, So the story in that, when you're facing the adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. It doesn't Adversity doesn't build your character. You already have that in you, and an adversity shows what level of character you actually have, what level of strength you actually have. So it reveals character. And we have amazing people, and I'm very fortunate to have the team that we do, because all hands on deck, we were able to take a crisis like that and figure out how to get a win out of that, figure out what the lesson is, figure out what systems and processes needed to change. And then most importantly, it's an opportunity for us to come as leaders to come through for the people that we have, which gets extra buy-in, extra commitment, which is not why we did it, because we did it because it's the right thing to do. But then we came out so much stronger on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes total sense, like Zig Ziglar says, you do well for enough people, you'll get everything you want, you give people what they want. And I think you have great guys overall. Because some people you will give, they will take, and show no gratitude at all. And I've seen your guys have been with you ever since I've known you. So that's a testimony itself, like.
Yeah, I get that from my dad. I mean, I get that from my dad 100%. He's a farmer. He's ran his farm for forever, and he's got people that have worked for him for 40 plus years. I mean, that's a lifespan. 40 plus years of work. I mean, it's a lifespan. So how you treat people is everything. Nobody's going to spend 40 years next to somebody if they don't feel the love and the connection, and they don't feel like they're taken care of, and they don't feel like they're a part of something bigger than just themselves. So it's just how you treat people, coming through for them, helping them in times of need, and then being there for their wins as well too, and just having a genuine interest in helping them.
That's good. Talking about transmitting the idea, right? Because sometimes you can have it in your mind and it's like perfect to you, but sometimes you have a hard time trying to transmit that to the team. How do you transmit that mission and vision of your company to your staff?
Well, I mean, there's two ways. You talk about it, and then you be about it. You need to verbally share what your vision is, and you need to get people to buy into the idea. And I find that I find that I'm pretty good at taking complicated subjects and simplifying them into bite-size, spoonfuls where people can really understand what it is that we're trying to build from a vision perspective. So it's talking about it, one, and then two is living by it. Elon Musk preaches, the idea of us becoming a civilization that travels interstellarly and goes to other worlds and goes to other planets and multiplanetary species. But not only does he talk about it, but he backs it up and he lives it, and that's his life, And most people, when you think of Elon, you think that, or you think Tesla or PayPal, whatever it is. But so I think it's both. I think it's talking about it, and I think it's living it, and I think it's having standards within the organization that line up with the framework in which you want to operate, right? So if you want to say, your mission is to replace the educational system, because why pay for 4 years of college to get a business degree when you could earn income through work while getting free coaching and development and mentorship, right? So we want to replace the educational system. Okay, great. But then we don't teach anything. and we don't help our guys, and then we don't inform them of anything, and we have no systems in place to educate and train and coach, then you can have that great mission, but then you don't have systems in place that line up with the framework of what that mission is. So you've got to make sure you've got your mission and you're talking about it and people understand what it is and they're committed and bought into the mission. And then you have to live that mission with the example, and then with systems and standards in place that line up with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's kind of like planning it out in the tent and then having something visual that they can, okay, this is, this is how it's
Yeah. What's the old expression? All wars are won in the general tent.
exactly.
Right? Wars are won in the general tent. That's right. But then there's
Napoleon
somebody,
Hill.
man, is it Napoleon Hill or like Marco Polo or somebody? One of that they said they would come up with the plan in the general's tent, and then he would go find me the dumbest soldier that we have in the battlefield. Bring me that person, and then he would explain the plan. And if that person didn't understand the plan, they would throw it away and rewrite something else. So there
That's
is an
actually pretty
element
smart.
of big strategy, but you've got to make sure that the people can implement the big strategy.
Yeah, no, for sure. You gotta explain it in apples. That's funny. How important is money to you, Franco? And how often do you talk to your guys about money?
Um, how important is it to me, or how important is it to the rest of the world? Because money is a
You
tool.
talking about you.
Money is a tool. Money is a resource. Money is something that, it allows you to do certain things and take care of certain people, right? My brother, my mom, my dad, like the most important people to me in the world. If my brother, all of a sudden comes sick with some deathly illness and needs a very expensive treatment, I value the life of my brother more than I do money. But I understand that money is what's going to help me take care of him. Does that make sense? So I don't necessarily rank money super high, but I do know because I value my friendships and people, and I value other things above it. But I understand that money is the resource necessary to be able to take care of all those other things. So I'm not that gung ho, like, commission guy. Let's make a bunch of money and money is everything. Like that's not really my go-to.
Uh-huh.
But I do make a lot of it, and I do have a lot of it because I want to be able to take care of the things that matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it is important to me. Your second part of your question was how often do I talk to my guys about it?
Yeah. How often do you sit with them and it's like, hey, do you have a financial plan? Like, where's your
Yeah, I mean it's very situational. It's very situational on what the individual wants to do. I stopped wanting to tell people what to do a long time ago. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, people need to want these things for them. Pain is everything, right? I can talk about personal finances and habits and disciplines all day, every day. Um, but if I'm not in a place where I've experienced enough pain about my finances to change certain habits for me to grow, then the information is going to go one ear out the other. So it's really situational. I don't necessarily have a specific formula in that. If anybody ever wants to have a conversation about money, I've got to go to, hey, let's start with these different steps. But yeah, I do want to see them win, and I do want to see them make a lot of that. That's for sure.
That's good. That's good. What's the biggest sell of your life you feel? It doesn't have to be a transactional one.
Yeah. Let me think about that. The biggest sell of my life. I'm gonna have to think about that. That's a great question.
I'm gonna ask you one and then we'll get back to that one.
Yeah, I was thinking about like it'll probably be whenever I find my wife. Like it'll probably be that's where my mind went. It's like whenever I find my wife, that's probably gonna be the biggest moment. It's like
You
share
know,
with
I
her on why she
I
should
know
spend the
you
rest of her
so
life.
well that I thought that you were thinking that. You were like, whenever I propose.
It probably hasn't. The biggest sale of my life probably hasn't come yet. It's
Yeah, that's good. If you were to start the entrepreneurship again, like the whole game again, and you were to talk to that 19-year-old Franco, what will you say to him?
The Saints are going to win the Super Bowl in '08, so you should bet a lot of money on that. No, I'm just kidding. I would give him the score, the final score of every Super Bowl that I know up until this point. That's what I
Do
would
it
give
bet.
19-year-old
10
Franco.
grand, 20 grand.
I'd go in on Bitcoin, everything you got, and then pull out at 70. If if I could talk to 19-year-old Franco, um, I would. Well, I wouldn't change anything. That's a fact. I wouldn't change anything about the story. So whatever it is that I do say, it can't impact the outcome of the story because I can't tip him off about certain failures. I can't tip him off about certain mix-ups or mess-ups. Can I curse on this thing? I almost said
Yeah,
fuck.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't tip him off about any fuck ups, or I can't tell him about any big wins, or I can't because he needed those things in order to become who he is. He needed to chase after that victory. And if I already knew that it was going to be a victory, then I probably went after it a little bit different. If I knew it was a guaranteed versus I knew that there was an element of risk that I didn't know if I would get rewarded or not. So anything that I would say to 19-year-old Franco can't tip him off on any of those things. You get what I'm saying? Because if I go into a competition and I guaranteed know that I'm gonna win because a future version of myself already told me that I'm gonna win, then I might not. I don't know. Subconsciously, I probably won't play the game the same. So any advice that I would give him, it would probably just be along the lines of trust yourself, listen to your gut, make mistakes, be kind to yourself, don't worry so much, and things are going to work out. Something like that. But I can't tip him off to any particular situation or event because those things need to happen.
You know, it's funny. I watched all the movies we were talking about last time in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Every single movie talks about from coming from behind, like really, really low,
Mm-hmm.
all the way to the top. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like that explains you itself because it's like, okay, it's the ride, is the there's a certain percentage of failure that there might be the possibility that actually gets you excited. And it's funny how that transmit even to the movies that you watch.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always said this about myself, my career, my coaches, my people. I'm very honest with my people about who I am, my strengths, my weaknesses, and all this. And I am my best when I'm building something. I
Hmm.
am my best where I'm my best when it's a white board and it's cleared and there's nothing on there and I have to construct and build and then put systems and then create something like that's when I'm at my best. When something is running full fire, full pistons, and it's just kind of running itself, I'm kind of at my worst. I'm just, like
Yeah.
I walk in, I'm like, any fires to put out? Anybody to help? Anything? Everybody's like, go away, we're good. I'm like, okay. And like I'm at my worst whenever things are going like that. So I love the process of building and grinding. And every moment you asked me about difficulties, the hurricane, the pandemic. There's been quite a few other situations, internal situations that have happened in which it's in the fire and I stop and I take a second and I'm like, I like this. Like this is what I'm made for. This is what I'm built for. And if I can solve for these things, everything else, everybody's always chasing this like calmness and peace and like everything's running itself. And maybe it's still because I'm still young. Maybe it's because of my age. Maybe because I'm just like, I don't know, I love the pain or whatever. But being in that middle of is what activates me. And I love that. And that's what I live for. And when things are like calm and easy and everything's passive, I'm like, this is kind of boring.
Mhm. I was reading this guy, Miko Nico, the guy
I think
that
I
he's a
know.
general, he's a sergeant, wrote a book, PVD interview him. Uh,
I'll have
the
to look it up.
guy, he's a multiple, podcast and stuff, but he has a gym, pretty successful guy. But because of his mentality, he. A lot through that. But he was talking about like what was what was my idea?
Was he talking about like building or being in the grind or like in the fire of things?
Yeah, like in chaos, right? Like the guy says, I've never thrived in peace.
Mm.
Like I have never
Hmm.
thrived in peace. So I'm like, all these people are trying to find peace. They're trying to find balance. Oh yeah, I just want to be happy. The idea that you're chasing happiness makes you unhappy, because if you find joy, you'll find the enjoyment of doing the daily monotonous of your life. But if you're
Yeah.
chasing happiness, it's kind of like result oriented. So it's like, if this happens, I'm happy. If this doesn't happen, I'm not happy. But joy, it's like finding the good in the things like running that are
Yeah.
painful hard.
I'm wondering, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm wondering if we were to track an average person's life, right? And we were to put it in a chart from day one to the last day, that they live. And we were to put it in a chart and we would average what percent of that time that they have is spent feeling stressed or frustrated or anxiety or feeling like negative, and what percent of it is spent feeling positive. I'd be curious to know on the average person how much time they have peace versus how much time they're in like war mode. You know what I mean? Um, what do you think the answer to that would be? Do you think more time people spend in war mode, or do you think more time people actually find peace and every day is great in your experience with people
I think they're just in the middle. They're
in the
just
middle?
they're just like in the middle enough and such a balance that they have numbed themselves into thinking that things are all right. So
Yeah,
that's the reason why people don't push themselves to a different level. Because if the pain will be painful enough, the dog will move out of the nail.
yeah.
Right? So the government and the media and all these things are just like working on that scale and keeping everything balanced. Don't make it too
Hmm.
painful, because if not, people are gonna go into a revolution. But don't make
Yeah,
it so comfortable, because if not, they're not gonna work for our companies. Like, it's just the perfect balance, in my opinion. And
yeah.
when you get an unbalance, you got people like you and me.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. That's
And
very
another
interesting.
thing I was thinking is that, let's say, and I was talking to a customer about this, he told me, it's like, Darwin, life is so easy now that you got to force yourself into doing things that are hard. He's like, if I want food right now, I can pull out Uber Eats and I'm a click away from my next meal. Before, we used to wake up, go hunt, and go kill, and maybe we'll eat, maybe we'll not. But our bodies were activated on survival mode every day.
Hmm.
Now we wake up and it's like, oh, I can call in for work. There's still gonna be, like,
Yeah.
it's so easy now. Like, you get on a car. Before, we used to like run and get to places. Like, the mom used to like take care of the family, make sure she doesn't get eaten by animals, but while the male is hunting. Like, there was so many things that we were operating over chaos, that now we just, our our ability to deal with chaos has reduced so much that our powers as humans has followed. Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
we
Yeah,
were
that's
talking
very
about that, and
interesting.
it's like, it's like all, it's like our genes and like our habits are altered through time.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I don't believe in like people say, oh, my dad smokes, so I smoke. No,
Right.
it's not genetic. It's just that you were in that environment and you're just following the same habits.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So you
Yeah.
think your biggest sell will be marriage?
Uh, oh man, when you say it like that, like in the span of my life,
Yeah. Or let's
well
say,
then the
until
next
now.
one, it's probably the next one coming, but then after that, like I gotta sell my kids and being good humans, you know what I mean? Probably have to try to, that's gonna be an 18-year process of trying to sell them why they should be a good humans. So that'll probably be a big sale. That's
How many
about
kids
two.
do you want to have?
I mean, it's not an exact size. I don't know. Maybe two, three, somewhere in there.
I see
Yeah,
you with
but
three.
you
One
know,
girl, two guys.
whatever.
What are your goals for the rest of the year,
How do
Frank?
you define that, Darwin? Since we're here being recorded and whatnot, you said you wanted one girl,
How do I
one
define
girl and two guys. How would you go ahead defining what a woman is, what a girl is?
that? A girl is beauty herself. You
Mm,
know, she has come
yeah,
to the world to nurture, give love, and just bloom. And
no,
we as guys, we must take care of them at all costs and make sure they're well taken care of, and build a life with them that can be sustainable and it
Okay,
can
got it.
operate
All right.
on an environment of
Sure.
peace and love.
So you're gonna let your children pick, basically, is what you're saying, right? 'Cause-
Children pick what? Oh, no, 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 no. On children, it's a different thing. That's women. Okay, when my children, they'll work from day one. They once you're 5 years old, you're starting reading. I'm gonna show you things like
Yeah.
my job, I've always thought about this, and I was talking to Jamie about this. And I was like, when I'm 40 years old, my kid's gonna come and we're gonna be barbecuing in the back of my house, maybe in California or from the beach. I don't know. And then my kid will ask me, "Hey, Dad, why do we live in this house? Like the house is big, a pool, we're going on vacations, we got all these perks. But Johnny, my friend Johnny, he lives in a box. Like, why? Like
Mhm.
so different." But or this is the other side, or we'll be at a box with like no pool, probably not even barbecuing, ramen noodles on the table, and the kid comes to me and it's like, Dad, like why Johnny lives in the big house and like a pool, like you never take vacations, his dad is always with him, like is he special? Like, and kids are so innocent, like they'll just ask you things. And I always think about the fact that I'm gonna be ashamed or I'm gonna be super
Mm.
proud of my answer. I'm either
Mm.
gonna make excuses or I'm gonna give my kid a lesson. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one because I've thought about that often on both sides, right? Because the fact that we didn't come from much is where a lot of our hunger comes from.
yeah,
So if you eliminate that, then what does that create?
comfortability.
You know
Just
what I mean? So it's just an interesting, how do you create that? Thinking about my kids, if me coming from nothing is what made me so hungry and I give them everything, what could that potentially create? So it's just an interesting
yeah.
question.
I mean, I think it's putting them on the right learning track. Like, hey,
Hmm.
like just like pushing the narrative of like, hey, just like what Shaq. It's like I'm rich, you guys are poor. Like my money is my money, and you're and
Yeah,
yeah,
but
but I know.
he says that,
Uh,
but his
to
kids, if he
an-
goes on vacation to the Ritz-Carlton, yeah, he flies private and they fly first class, because they're, but still, like,
It is what it is.
yeah,
Yeah. Bro, thank you so much for hopping on. I
of
really
course.
appreciate your time. I learned a ton. I didn't what city of Europe were you in?
So I studied in Florence in Italy.
Oh,
And
Italian?
I spent 3 months there. Not really. I mean, I know Spanish very well, and then most
Yeah.
Italian, French, Portuguese, they all have the root language, Latin, so you can understand most of it, but I don't speak it fluently. No, but I did 3 months there, and then I took a wine appreciation class, wine and cheese appreciation class, and took an art class, and then got college credit for it, which is don't get me started on college. But yeah, so I did the study abroad there, and then I just traveled and I moved around everywhere for like 3 months. It was a lot of fun.
Did you hunt while you were there?
I did do some of that. I did do some of
Perhaps comes in handy.
that. I did do some of that.
All right, my man. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you
All
for
right,
hopping on.
Darwin, pleasure talking to you. We'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon,
All
my
right,
man. I'll see you
take
then.
care. Bye.
Take care, you too. Bye bye.